When have you been genuinely scared for your life? When I was at work, retail job mind you, I was at register and suddenly got very dizzy before a really sharp pain went from my neck down to my left hand. It went numb. Apparently there was a very visible flinch I had done from that pain. Customer asked if I was okay. I said yes. I needed the money, so I stayed quiet. It hurt to breath, my arm to my neck still hurt, my speech sucked, and my vision dragged, so I had to turn my head to look at things. I wanted to call for the store manager so I could go sit down, but we were swamped. I had to push through. I had to watch my numb hand to make sure I grabbed something while scanning. I felt if I didn't keep pushing, the dizzy feeling in my head would take over, or I would fall over. Most of all of it faded within 20 or so minutes. Vision being dragged behind was still there until much later. Spoke to store manager as the store was closed. She said that sounded like a mini stroke. She chewed me out for not saying anything sooner and had me drink some water. She said it could have been due to stress, but a young woman shouldn't be having any kind of stroke, even what it was. I apologized and told her I would get some rest to relax and remove some stress. I was so scared to those words. Just turned 24 and almost having a stroke. Please be kind to retail workers. We don't have the money to go to the hospital if we do have a stroke or heart attack at work. If there is even a chance you had a mini stroke years ago, you need to go see a doctor. This could be a sign of much worse things to come. Strokes of any kind don't happen for no reason. It wasn't necessarily that I was scared for my life, but I was very concerned. I was in PE class in my sophomore year and we were allowed to play what we wanted and had free time. My friends and I saw an empty shopping cart they had out where kids can grab any ball they wanted for activities, so, foolishly, we decided to mess around. I got on the front of the cart facing my friend who was pushing me at a very intimidating speed and let go of the cart. All I knew was that I wanted to get off and I thought maybe if I jumped off and tried to land softly it would work. I jumped off but the speed was too much and I fell hard on the floor, hitting my head. Instantly my vision became blurry, my hearing became rather impaired, or it sounded as if I was hearing noise from underwater, and I became extremely lightheaded and my speech became very incoherent. The feeling lasted for about a minute but it felt like an eternity. Fortunately, no long-lasting effects occurred after what felt like a bat to the head. Scared for my life? Maybe not entirely. I had tried to commit suicide in Dec of 2018 and failed. When I woke up I was sweating and burning up and I felt immensely sick to the stomach. I had overdosed and had been out for a whole day. I still don't remember it all, only blurs, maybe for the better. I apparently had profusely vomited on and off for 4+ hours of that day and I was on many fluids by IV because of it. The reason I was scared for my life is because I had developed severe muscle spasms and twitches, sort of like a conscious seizure, as a result of the overdose. If I became any bit anxious, I have severe anxiety, then my entire body would become out of my control. I was twitching, jerking, flailing, and I couldn't stop it. It would eventually stop after 10+ minutes or so, but it always came back. I did want to end my life before, but because of my failure I was now faced with the possibility of a life with an uncontrollable body. After 3 weeks it thankfully went away. Sadly, that experience has not taken care of my self-destructiveness or my mental health, but I am seeking treatment now, trying to get better. Hey man, good luck and much love. I was in high school. My dad, who was an alcoholic, had gotten drunker than a skunk and was absolutely furious. Throughout my life up to that point I had seen him get drunk, angry, and violent many times, but I had never seen him rage like he did that night. It was a murderous fury. I understand where the legend of werewolves come from because that night it was like my dad had transformed into a viscous monster. I'd gone to my room to hide and I barricaded the door. Being a scared teenage girl with nothing but pillows, clothes, and books for blockade supplies, my barricade was highly ineffective. He forced his way into my room despite me throwing my entire weight against the door to keep it closed. He then went on a rampage. I think he ran towards me but I don't remember. I know he came towards me and I kept backing up until I was back into the wall. My memory of that night is very fragmented, which is really strange as I usually have a detailed memory. I hit him a couple times trying to get him to back off, but I was never particularly strong and he was out of his mind from alcohol. I don't know if he even felt the pain as it did nothing to slow him down, though my mom said she found bruises on for him days later. He threw some things at me, like pillows, probably because those were conveniently nearby. They hurt but they didn't cause any bruises. I hid those things under my bed afterwards and didn't pull them out until after I'd been in college for 2 years. My mother and siblings were nowhere. They were home but I don't know where they were when this was happening. I never asked. I really and truly believed he would kill me. I didn't really understand fight, flight, or freeze until that night. Weirdly, I did all those things that night. Unfortunately, none of them seemed to protect me. It was the only time in my life I was ever scared for my life, and it impacted the way I viewed the world. At 3 different occasions. First was when I'd been drinking with a friend and mixed a lot. Then I took aspirins for the headache and thought I'd die from how much I vomited that night and the pain. Second time was when I woke up barely able to breathe. Anything above the absolutely smallest amount of breath, not even enough to fill your mouth, would cause immense pain like I've never felt before. I wouldn't wish it on my worst hated enemy. It was like being stabbed by knives all over your chest at the same time as you were being burnt alive, and since I were barely able to breathe, much less move, I couldn't do much. Managed to force myself through the pain and call 1177. It's like a helpline for lesser stuff than 911. 112 in Sweden. Requires on the medical spectrum. After about half an hour, moving slowly closer to the phone with my arm each time I tried, and they sent an ambulance ASAP. Third time was when I experienced sleep paralysis. Same thing there, wouldn't wish it upon anyone. It's terrible and I genuinely was scared for my life. I never hope to experience that again. I took my 13-month-old puppy to a friend's house about 30 minutes away. The quickest route to and from was a dark, deserted road that was about 10 miles long with a few stoplights to prevent speeding. My puppy was asleep in the seat next to me, and since it was about 11 PM I was exhausted, sweaty, and definitely not paying attention to my surroundings. I pulled up to a red light, and this light was notorious for being extremely long, and on occasions I ran it. There was no point sitting at the light for 20 minutes waiting for it to change. Anyways, this dude pops up from out of nowhere like the velociraptors from Jurassic Park and proceeds to try and open my driver door. I scream and grab the handle to try and prevent the door from opening. My dog immediately jumps up and launches herself at the tiny gap he created. She can't get through to him and starts attacking the window. He freaks out, backs off, and I slam my foot down on the gas and run the light. She ended up with a bloody nose and I ended up alive, so I'd say we were lucky. Since then she's protected me when I was attacked from behind on New Year's Eve entering my apartment. She's a Houdini when it concerns her kennel. She's killed spiders for me, and she's been the goodest of doggos. When I was 8 years old we had an hour in our elementary school where we could play outside. I was climbing on I don't know the English word for this, on a wall. I call it Kletterwand in German. The first few times everything went fine. As I was climbing again my hands got all sweaty and I couldn't hold myself in the wall anymore. I fell 2 meters to the ground. At first I was just laying there and wanted to start to cry, but I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't breathe when I tried it again and I started to suffocate. My teacher saw me grasping for air and called the ambulance. They later found out that I broke my back or spine. My English isn't that good. On 3 different spots, and that was the reason my lungs wouldn't work. It got better after a few days. I'm glad that I still can walk. We call those rock walls in the US at least. Also ouch, that sounds both terrifying and painful. I'm sorry young you had to experience that. Back in high school we were in an out of town swim meet. It was end of the day and we were in charge of putting the pool covers on. Well, some of us were in the pool dragging them across. I was one of those guys. I took one across, and you would just kind of swim under about 5 feet and pop up on the other side. Something happened, hard to remember now, but I got a little delayed. As I was about to come out on the other side of mine, the next one goes in. No big deal, only 5 more feet. But then the next one comes in, then the next, and it's getting darker where I'm at. Running out of air, Still swimming forward, I try to push through the top. No luck. Suction keeps those things down and I can't find a seam. Now I panic and just swim as fast as I can to light. It's all a little fuzzy after that, but I made it to the end and grabbed someone's leg. They helped me get out. Had nightmares about that for a while after. We were on vacation in Puerto Rico when I was around 10. We were in these crappy rental cars. We had to take two because my family is so big, and the GPS started taking us up this mountain. At first we were like that's odd, but then it started getting increasingly dangerous. There were many twists and turns and no guardrails or indication that there were sudden freaking drop-offs on the sides of the gravel path road. Well, the mountain kept getting steeper and steeper, and when we tried going up this one hill, the car literally couldn't do it. The road didn't even look wide enough to be able to turn around. So when we did, I was freaking terrified for my life that we were going to go over the edge. Looking back I can laugh at it, but I genuinely thought I was going to die at the time. Was driving my moped and about to pass a farmer's tractor with a couple hay wagons or something similar. I passed the first wagon and the driver suddenly shifted to the other side of the road to avoid a pit in it. I saw the first wagon suddenly in front of me and only had enough time to go as close to the roadside as possible. Unfortunately there was a railing at the side of the road and I didn't have enough time to simply slow down, as now I was carefully trying to hold my balance between the railing and the second wagon, and I couldn't see if part of the wagon was behind me. Shortly after that I either hit the railing with my moped or just lost balance since it was so tight and tumbled to the ground. I think all this happened in less than 10 seconds, but I'm not sure. I didn't get hurt, at least other than the pain from impacting scraping myself on the asphalt. Don't think I got any wounds from what I can recall. It's been a couple years now. As far as I know, the driver of the tractor didn't notice anything. Check your mirrors, people. Got threatened with rape and murder in my own dang car in a church parking lot. I was hanging out with this boy who I thought I'd be good friends with. I knew he was a little off since he does drugs and isn't too into school. A typical you're throwing your life down the drain kind of kid. He was 18 at the time and I was 16. I'm a girl. I had been driving around for a while with him in my passenger seat when I noticed that my gas tank was almost empty. So we decided to park in a church parking lot by our houses. We live pretty close to each other and just talk for a bit. After a few minutes of talking, he tells me that he likes me and that I'm pretty and asks me if I want to rub his dong. Feo. Obviously I say something along the lines of I don't know. I've never done anything physical before, so I don't feel like now is a good time. He continues to persistently ask me and I keep telling him no, when all of a sudden he goes, just feel my dong. I'm hard. I guess he was getting off on being told no. And before I can even refuse, he grabs my hand and places it on his dong. I abruptly pull away and I'm like, WTF. He then says, if you're not gonna do it, I'm gonna make you. And I say, I think we better go. It's almost my curfew. A lie. And he then says to me, honestly, I was being nice, and if you don't want to give me head, I'll violate you and then kill you so you never tell anyone. Yeah, no. I kicked him out of my car and peel out that be like I'm in NASCAR. A few days later, I tell our mutual friend about what happened and she goes, yeah, I'm not surprised, TBH. He got high while driving one time and killed a woman and her baby by hitting their car off of an overpass. That's why he went to jail. I never knew this and she was the one to introduce me to him. WTF. Wowsome friend you had. Holy crap. Was in a Greyhound bus that was converted into an RV with my stepdad when I was 15. We were heading to a campground to spend the weekend and fish. My stepdad was driving and I was in the passenger seat, which was a plush swivel chair right above the stairs next to the door. We were just talking about nonsense when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a big truck in front of us started pumping out a huge cloud of thick white smoke. It must have through a rod or something, and the white smoke may have been oil burning off in the engine. Anyway, my stepdad couldn't see anything and we were going probably 70 miles per hour or so. He slams on the brakes and I ask him in a calm, collected voice, are we going to die? And the next thing I know, I feel a crash and things pile up on top of me. The next thing I hear is my stepdad laughing and I feel the RV start to pick up speed again. It turns out he slammed on the brakes and everything that wasn't nailed down came flying forward. The chair I was in and everything behind me came lurching forward and I was buried under the stairs. I was fine. but shaken, and can say, if you're in an RV, tie your crap down please. Me and my friends were coming back from a trip to the beach, and a friend of mine was driving so incredibly stupidly that I genuinely thought we were going to crash and die. He was taking every corner at maximum speed, tires squealing, overtaking in a 2-lane road without looking if there were other cars coming our way, etc. Just driving like he wanted to die, to be honest. Fortunately, I was going to pay for the road tolls because nobody had money, so I threatened that I would get out of the car and go home by myself or call my parents to come pick me up. I was about 22 at the time. It was approximately a 530-kilometer trip. He calmed down after that. Freaking idiot. I was a kid and was jumping on the bed with my sister. My mom goes, don't jump on the bed with the radiator right there, and I, in the way all kids somehow gravitate towards the worst possible scenario, ended up falling and hitting my head on the radiator. It didn't actually hurt past the first few seconds, but I was gushing blood and sobbing hysterically and asking my mom if I was gonna die. It was bad enough I had to go to the hospital and get staples in my head. In hindsight, it wasn't that bad of an injury, but being a kid and seeing that much blood gushing out of your head makes you think you're gonna die any second. Haha. Was going down the street to hop into a kiosk to buy me ice cream from my hoarded pocket money. I was 4 years old and at that time, already allowed myself to just go out the door and do little things, like this trip to the kiosk. Some guy in his late teens, early 20s came up to me when I was just about to take a curve, pulled out a knife and told me to give him all my money. From the road I took the turn from, a girl, maybe 18, saw this and stripped him into a conversation. As a distraction for me to conveniently stroll off, I almost peed myself and started to cry, like what the heck, robbing someone 1/3 the size of you. Karma got to him though. She was my second girlfriend and it was my first time genuinely in love with somebody. I was connected to her so much more than anything I'd ever felt in my life. We were talking on the phone, I believe, and she got really depressed. It was about how she didn't think she deserved someone like me. Of course I felt that it wasn't true and tried to convince her otherwise. I'd like to mention that people generally opposed of our relationship because she was a tomboy and looked too much like a guy, so she didn't have a great self-image at the time. She suddenly hung up and I was extremely worried about her. I kept calling and calling. I also texted in between because things felt like they got a whole lot worse. Sometime later she picked up in tears and started apologizing, saying that she couldn't continue what she was doing while looking over at her phone seeing me call so many times. She told me that she was planning on overdosing on her meds. She was already down her third and about to take another. She was normally supposed to take just one a day. I don't know how much was lethal, but I was so shocked and my heart just stopped. It hurt so hard to hear that she had almost killed herself just because she believed that I deserved better. I don't remember what I did when I saw her again, but I'd be the worst man in the world if I didn't give her the biggest hug and kiss back then. We are no longer together, but I treasure the time I got to spend with her. She's currently alive and well in a happy relationship with her boyfriend. We still chat occasionally even though I had to move, and I plan on visiting her sometime this summer. At about 7 years old I was hospitalized after having a UTI for 3 weeks. I was so sick I had lost like 20 pounds and couldn't eat food without throwing it back up. My mom took me for 4 doctors who didn't know what was wrong with me, and I even went into an emergency room with a fever of 105 and had cracked my wrist bone the same day. And I stayed in that waiting room long enough to have like 3 doses of Tylenol administered by the receptionist. It got bad enough I was passing out routinely because I was so sick my body was slowly breaking down. By the time I was hospitalized I had weighed 33 pounds, had been so dehydrated my lips were cracking, and even threw up the second I had an IV attached because my body couldn't handle it. I was in the hospital for the entire spring break of my 2nd grade, and I know how much my mom was scared for me because so many doctors told her that either nothing was wrong with me or they didn't know what was wrong with me. A doctor I went to after the whole fiasco had even mentioned to me and my mom that he had learned about me in medical school because I was used as a test case in some captivity because I was so sick that I had 35,000 white blood cells fighting my UTI and had managed to last 3 weeks. That UT spread to my kidneys. Now I get a UT at least once a year and now can know within a day that I have one and go to the doctor and demand a urinalysis because most doctors don't believe I have one since I never hurt during them. So I'm from the Oklahoma-Kansas-Missouri border. I've been through a lot of tornado scares in the past 19 years of my short, pitiful life. Here are some highlights. My mom carried me in her arms and ran a whole football field's length to get us to the community shelter when the tornado sirens failed one night. The tornado was within a mile of us. I remember the flagpole outside our building swaying sideways in the wind while she covered my head with her arms to protect me from the hail. I was scared of storms after that first incident. So one night, when I was about 11, I was hiding in the bathtub during a thunderstorm while everyone else slept. The power flickered and then went out. In a panic I dropped my book and stumbled into the hallway. There was this huge ripping, tearing sound outside, and the floor was shaking, so I put my hands on the hall walls to balance myself. The apartment was literally trembling. I could see out the living room window that trees were beginning to uproot. I was too panicked to move. My mom again saved me when she ran out of her room and pulled me into the hall closet. Another tornado that same year got so close that while mom and I hid in the closet together, she started seriously praying for us in case we died. And then there's the mile-wide monster that destroyed my hometown of Joplin in 2011. The thing was green and black and made a noise like a freight train. Just a steady pulsing sound. We were on the highway when it hit town. The highway was so empty, except for people driving on the wrong side just booking it into Kansas. Because we weren't really sure what was happening yet, we made a U-turn and followed them. Baseball-sized hail started hitting the car by the time we stopped at a rural gas station for shelter. TLDR, tornadoes want to eat my butt like groceries. I was sick. My fever was 105, so I drove myself to the ER. They put me in the critical care unit and pretty much covered me in ice packs. Middle of the night and my fever was 107. Then the strangest thing happened. I've never told anyone about it. The whole area seemed to darken except for ribbons of bright light. One of the ribbons was from my stomach, but mine was thinner, dimmer. It looked like high security laser beams. All the ribbon lights crisscrossing each other. I laid there and just watched mine stretch thinner and get dimmer. I started to cry even though nothing was hurting and I wasn't scared. I knew with absolute conviction that if my light went too dark, I'd die. It felt like a very okay thing. Like just letting go would be okay. I'd simply cease. My remaining light would go to the universe and that was okay. I wanted to tell the nurse about the ribbon lights and that it was okay for me to go, so I pressed the call button. Unfortunately I couldn't get the words out, but there was a big commotion. New ice packs and an IV that made me sleep. I woke up the next day with a normal fever. My head tells me I was very close to death, but it just sounds dramatic and weird. So I've never told anyone until now. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.